I mean, most of you know us, but let me just start out. I'm Leslie Wharton. I am a co-chair of Elders Climate Action, which I joined in September 2015 after Grandparents Climate Action Day. I started a chapter in Maryland, which has since, let's say that the members of that chapter have gone on to bigger and better things or other and different things in climate change. They're all activists, but I'm working on reformulating a chapter. And I am currently leading our engagement committee and council of chapters, which we'll talk about later. Jerry?
I'm, most of you know me, Jerry Friedman. I am in Florida, and I'm really excited to see the growth of ECA and chapters, and hopefully you guys will all learn a little bit. Some of the material you may be familiar with, some of it less so. So we're going to help you through being a stupendous, fabulous chapter.
And Jen?
And I'm Jen Chandler. I'm the Director of Operations for Elders Climate Action. And my goal tonight is really to just help you guys understand tools and resources that we've created in order to support the efforts that you all are doing. And we're always open to feedback and suggestions and input and integrating any of the materials that you all are creating in your chapters into sort of helping other chapters as they form. I think one of the key purposes of this meeting is really to, one, let you all see each other, as some of you are actually formed chapters, some of you are chapters in formation, and some of you might just be interested in potentially starting a chapter. So we have sort of various levels of chapter leadership here. But what we want is really to help build a system that supports you. And so some of the things that some of the actions that you're doing are going to be really important for other chapters to know about and for us to really create a collaborative and sharing environment to support the chapters. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about some of the materials that we have and tools that we have available for chapters.
Hunter, we see you now.
Yeah, I'm on a different computer. Now I'm on two computers.
All right. Well, thank you, Jen. So as Jen indicated, I mean, the purpose for this initial call is to make sure we're all on the same platform. An overview of ECA and its structure and purpose, some of its accomplishments and challenges to date. Most of you are familiar with these, but by running through them without spending a lot of time, we make sure that we all have sort of the same basis. And then we're going to start introducing you to basic guidelines and tools for forming and then working as chapters. And let me tell you, there's a lot there. And if you're not already familiar with it, and many of you are, it may seem overwhelming at first, but don't worry. In the next few days, Jen's going to make sure you get these slides. And when you access these slides, you can go through them in, the time, give them the attention that you want to, and you'll be able to click on the hyperlinks, the blue text, to actually go in and see the handbook or the guidelines or materials. So we're giving you a quick overview of some materials and resources and background that you can then spend some time looking at in more detail. And frankly, there are things you'll have questions about. So are we going to start the PowerPoint?
And right quick before we start, I'm going to go ahead and mute all those of you who are not presenting. And presenters, you're going to have to unmute yourselves and remute yourselves. But that way it just keeps it clean and we can all get through the presentation without too much interruption. If you have questions as we go, feel free to insert them in the question box or in the chat box, excuse me, and we'll attempt to get to them at the end. And if not, we will certainly address those on in future meetings.
Anyway, so this is ECA 101 for chapter leaders. We can go to the next slide.
Sure, just one second. Oops, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. This is just our basic mantra. And going on to the next slide.
There's someone on the phone, I believe. I'm just trying to mute that individual, and I can't seem to get them muted.
All right. Well, this is a photograph that was taken at Elders Climate Action Day 2017 of some of the people who were there. They went up over the top of the stairs, and there were others down on the bottom. But this gives some. You can see the excitement and the fun we were having while we were addressing an issue as existentially critical as climate change. So we're focused on elders, and we reach out to elders because, actually elders have particular strengths in demanding action on climate change that a lot of others don't have. First of all, we've got a lifetime of experience, and whatever mistakes we've made in our lives, we've developed some wisdom. And we're in a position where we're really advocating for the welfare of others now and in the future. So it isn't tainted by the possibility that it's really to get a promotion or, well, that's the place we work and that's what we're trying to do. No, when we step out, people know that we're stepping out, not because we're being paid, not because we're part of, some systemic group, but because we're passionate and we're putting our personal time and energy to this. We're speaking on behalf of the common good. And frankly, I was an American historian originally, and I wrote about our founding fathers, and their focus was on the common good as the foundation and purpose of creating our federal government. Next slide. So this is a simple statement of our mission. And we know that greenhouse gases are the cause of climate change. And we take on a variety of initiatives and policies and collaborations with other groups to basically reduce greenhouse gases by a multitude of methods, by not putting them in, by not supporting industries, by drawing them down through appropriate agriculture. But our mission is to reduce greenhouse gases in our atmosphere to a level consistent with life thriving on the planet. Given the recent IPCC report and the fourth national assessment, our timeline is not that long. So I'm going to turn it over to Jerry now.
Thank you. Thank you. So the HEMES principles are really a way to ensure inclusion, respect, and a more democratic organization. And we have adopted those principles as part of our core values. And all of our chapters are going to be adopting all of those principles too, as part of our overall goals. And we're a part of the U.S. Climate Action Network, which is an organization of 170 environmental and climate organizations. And they, as an organization, have adopted these same principles and actually state that they require anybody that's within their umbrella that they also adopt the HEMES principles. So we've adopted it. That's near and dear to our heart. It's something that takes work, and it takes an awareness and a consciousness of what it is. But it's really important to us. Next slide. So we may be elders, but we are a really young organization. We are only just a little over 4 years old. In the scheme of things, that's a very young organization. We're part of Elders Action Network, which was Conscious Elders Network previously, and that is a larger nonprofit. Next slide. So elders really count. You know this. They're especially in the voting booth. I think we may not be the largest voting bloc very shortly. I think we're being taken over by youth, but we will remain a huge voting bloc. We don't have the data on the current data, most recently from the polls. But next slide. So we have some policies that we advocate for as an organization, and they change over time as do some of the issues. But the goal overall is the reduction of greenhouse gases, and we get there through our advocacy of our policies. Next slide. Since our inception, we've had some core initiatives. These really haven't changed. They've changed in terms of context, but not in terms of actual initiatives. Carbon fee and dividend legislation, which just sort of lingered and went nowhere, has now reemerged in a slightly different form. And it may not be passed this year, but it's something that's very near and dear and very critical to the environment. We are working to have the EPA not do any more damage to regulations in reducing their regulations and rollbacks, and state and local policies and chapters and individuals especially want to work on policies that are relevant to them where they live, and it's very different. You know, what's in Prescott, Arizona, where Jen is, her state issue is certainly not sea level rise, but it is mine in Florida. So, you know, that's where chapters take on a different perspective based on their geographic area. And promoting fossil fuel divestment. This is pretty, you know, simple stuff, but it's important. Next slide. So what have we done in the past 4 years? Well, we've held 2 gatherings in DC. We visited 535 congressional offices in 1 day. We've had meetings on the Hill. We've had our flash mob, which I urge you to take a look at. It's on our website. It just shows that we can have fun while we're doing what we're doing. We've had a variety of campaigns, asking candidates to pledge they would take climate action, asking elders to pledge they would consider climate when they voted, writing letters to loved ones in their future. And in 2018, we had a really popular webinar series of 4 webinars, which we hope to repeat this year. And Northern California chapter hosted a gathering, a day-long gathering in San Francisco, tied with the Global Climate Summit. So we've been very active. We're working on growing our membership and promoting our advocacy. Next slide. So on a monthly basis, we have our newsletter, which goes out every month. We have periodic bulletins. Our climate tea and talks, if you're not familiar with them, I know some of you are. They're really informal, more casual conversations, small groups. And we can have as many small groups as we want within our one conference call, and we just have conversation about what's important about climate to individuals and sharing of ideas. And then our national calls are a little more structured, and we have guest speakers that are timely and relevant to what we're doing nationally and what chapters are doing and what individuals are doing all over the country. So how do we engage elders? A variety of ways. There's options. Chapters, which is very organized, collaborations, which are just initiatives with another organization. They may be short-lived or long-term. And teams, where a team identifies a project. The teams can be large or small, but they are not necessarily wanting to be a chapter. And we have national committees where individuals can participate in leadership roles in ECA. And we hope that you all will be willing to do that at some point. So basically, how we engage elders, it's whatever works for you in your area. And now I'm going to turn it back to Leslie, who's going to talk a little more about chapters.
Right. So now we're turning to why you are here as either current or prospective chapter leaders. And most of you are probably already familiar with our organizational structure and these sort of simple steps for getting a chapter up and running. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time. First, on the right side of your screen, you see a infographic. I learned that from Jen, on the organizational structure. And as Jerry mentioned, Elders Climate Action is under the umbrella of Elders Action Network. It used to be called Conscious Elders Network, and it has a number of different groups, and Elders Climate Action is one of those groups. Elders Action Network is a 501c3, and so we have that 501c3 nonprofit status. And then under Elders Climate Action, we form chapters. And right now we have a number of chapters, Arizona, Massachusetts, NorCal, and others. And one of the ways we really grow our membership is through growing chapters, because people like to get together. Even if it's virtual, they like to get together. They like to see each other. They like to work on things that impact them in their backyards, that relate to things that are happening around them. And the chapter is the place where you can create that community of interest and really generate a lot of energy and enthusiasm. Now, inside ECA, we have 2 national committees that focus on chapters. Jerry just mentioned we had a bunch of them. And the primary national chapter that focuses, national committee that focuses on chapters is our engagement committee. And the engagement committee was created to provide support, oversight, and coordination for chapters. And in effect, this ECA 101 for chapters is an action of the engagement committee. It is reaching out to our chapter leaders and potential chapter leaders to make sure we're sort of on the same page, we're aware of the resources, and we can engage in shared dialogue, raise issues, and ask questions. The other committee at a national level that focuses on chapters is our Council of Chapters. And sort of Clean Climate Tea and Talk, that's a forum for chapter leaders and members to get together and share their experiences, share advice, get info from other chapters who face similar issues, identify areas where chapters can collaborate or coordinate their efforts, identify issues they're working on that might take off somewhere else, and resources that they can share that they've already spent time developing. So the Council of Chapters is really sort of, where you sit down over a cup of tea or beer or whatever, and we sort of just engage in sort of open dialogue and sharing. Now, the steps for becoming a chapter are fairly simple, and I'm not going to go through them. Familiarize yourself with the materials on chapters on the website. You can reach out to other chapter leaders and ask to join Council of Chapters call if you want to hear other members of chapters speaking. And then there's a simple application form when you feel ready to get going. And honestly, you can get going with just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people who are interested in forming that chapter. And the application form really is asking you more for just information. What would be the location, name of your chapter, who would be chapter leaders. It's sort of gathering the information. You can go to the next slide. So the engagement committee is the committee that looks at chapter applications, and assuming they don't have any questions, they pass it on to our coordinating council, which is sort of like our board of directors, the sort of it coordinates all our national committees and tries to make sure everyone is on the same page and we're sharing resources and we're being efficient and we know what's going on. And the coordinating council will review chapter applications, and once they're approved by the coordinating council, then you get given access to a whole bunch of additional resources. And some of those resources can really help you pump up and sort of do your branding. A chapter logo, which would be the ECA logo, but with the name of your chapter on it, like Maryland chapter or NorCal chapter. You can have a chapter web page. If you want to set up a Facebook page, the handbook will show you what support there is for it. And we can reach out to people who are in the geographic area where you want your chapter to be. If they're members of ECA and we have information that we can reach out to them, we can reach out to them and invite them to join the chapter and participate with you. Next slide. So as Jerry indicated before, every chapter is different. There's a different geographical context, different local and state opportunities to address climate change. And this is simply a list of the basic expectations for our chapters. What it makes us all sort of the arms and the legs of Elders Climate Action. And while Elders Climate Action is the core, chapters have a lot of flexibility in taking on climate issues that impact them most, and can have a lot of influence on ECA and its policies and projects, because it's that feedback from the chapters. It's the initiative that a chapter takes on that gives rise to the decision to try to spread that out more broadly, make that part of our national goals. So there is an enormous amount of ebb and flow, back and forth sharing between the chapters, which are really our sort of functioning activist groups, and what I would call ECA National, which has the committees and groups that try to provide the resources, the central direction, the coordination, all of the infrastructure that lets chapters and members move forward and be effective. And now I'm going to turn it back to Jerry.
Great, thank you, Leslie. That was great. So, as I said, we're an organization. We have been in existence since 2014, although didn't get nonprofit status until much later, it's middle to late of 2015. But you know, there are, as an organization, it's important that we retain our integrity and our reputation and our goals. And to do that, we have some, you know, basic criteria. One is that we're nonpartisan. We have been nonpartisan prior to becoming a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have always, that was our core from the very beginning. We ask that chapters hold regularly scheduled meetings that are open to anybody that's in the area, in your geographic area. They don't have to be in-person meetings, clearly. They could be Zoom meetings. Chapters will have access to Zoom. And they don't necessarily have to be monthly. They could be, you know, whatever schedule you choose. One of the things that Jen is going to be getting into is to submit a monthly report, and it's a really critical piece of information that we require. We're applying for funds, we're applying for grants, we're looking at funders, and one of the things that's absolutely essential is that we have some quantifiable data to give them, and the only way we can get that is through our chapters. So we have some, and we're not bureaucratic, but we have some basic criteria. Any income and expenditures have to go through Elders Action Network, and we've got a guidance on that. And you would have a standard format in naming the chapter. It will be Elders Climate Action Arizona chapter, or whatever your locale it happens to be. So all of these things are really important. They're not cumbersome, they're not onerous, but as chapter leaders, these are areas that are critical. And I think an example of remaining nonpartisan is in social media. we can't endorse candidates, for instance, in social media. We can't support any specific candidate's action. And we can't do that in social media. We can't go to do that in person or in any way, because it really violates our nonpartisan policies. There are some additional rules that are non-negotiable because they are IRS rules. And we are a 501c3 organization, which means that, as I said, we're prohibited from directly or indirectly participating in political campaign of any candidate for a public office. So basically it's a 1, 2, 3. It's no political campaigns. Every action has to be nonpartisan, and no financial contributions to political campaigns. Education and advocacy is what we're about, and that's permitted. Now, you may see other organizations and say, well, Sierra Club supports, goes out and has a support for candidates. They may well, but they may well not be doing it under the auspices of a 501c3. There's another IRS code which allows for a different organizational structure that allows for that. And many of our nonprofit partners have both. We only have a 501c3, which makes it very limiting in what we can do. And it's really important because the 501c3 is in the name of Elders Action Network, and we are a project of theirs, and we don't want to jeopardize any of their ability to continue their work.
And let me just step in here, and because we're talking now about acting on behalf of Elders Climate Action and under its aegis. Obviously, as individuals, taking off our ECA hats and badges, we can do anything we want partisan. We just can't do it qua ECA or ECA membership.
Thank you. Thank you. Next slide. So there may be circumstances in which chapters either obtain grants, like as did the Massachusetts chapter, or has donations given to the chapter in the chapter's name, and that is fine. Certainly is not required, but in order to apply for grants, what we do is we ask that that application go through Elders Action Network, goes through ECA National and Elders Action Network, because they are the president of Elders Action Network is the only person authorized to enter into agreements. So it's the only person who can really apply for grants on behalf of us. We have a fundraising guidance, which if you have any interaction with any kind of grants or donations, you should review that before that. There's a requirement that if you have donations, that before spending against them, there's a budget so that it's clear. There's also restrictions on expenditures. They're not huge by the IRS, and we have to make sure that we're within the limits of that. And EAN administrative person does manage all the funds and supports that service for chapters, and so they may retain some of that fund in order to process all the grants and the applications and process the reimbursements, checks, etc. So please look at the fundraising guidance if you either have funds or plan to have any funds. And if there's any questions, we're happy to answer them. And just so you know, we make it pretty easy, or I shouldn't say we make it pretty easy. Jen makes it pretty easy for you to do any of these things because she has developed forms and documents where it's just plug in information in order to make things happen. So there's a lot of those available, and so it's not as difficult as it may sound. It's in fact not difficult at all. So we have no capacity right now to either sell merchandise at all. And that's something that we don't anticipate anywhere in the near future. So that's not something, and we do not collect, EAN doesn't collect membership fees, ECA doesn't, and chapters cannot collect membership fees either. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jen, who's going to get some more detail about what's available to you, all the tools and tricks that you can have to make you a successful chapter.
All right. Well, I'm really excited about this part because I am excited by all of the tools that we've created in the last year or so for you and to help you. And I think one of the most important things that we've done in the last year has been putting together a chapter leadership handbook. And this handbook you can find a few different ways. You can link to it on the ECA website. It's actually in the chapter directory section. If you go to the chapter directory section on the website, you'll see that at the bottom of that page, there's actually a section that's resources for chapters. So it's kind of a quick and easy way for chapters to find some resources directly through our website. Also, chapter leaders have access to a shared folder called the Council of Chapters on Google Drive. And so that folder, Council of Chapters folder, we're going to talk a bit about tonight. And that's sort of the central hub of all the documents and all the information for chapters coming from ECA or being shared with ECA out of chapters. And Google Drive, for those of you who aren't familiar, is just a very, very good tool for collaborative work. Google Drive is essentially like a filing cabinet of all of our files that can be shared amongst all the individuals that they need to be shared with. And then you use apps like Google Documents, which is like Microsoft Word, to edit, or Google Sheets, which is like Excel, to edit your files, and so on. So Drive is really like that filing cabinet for the organization. And so Council of Chapters has their own filing cabinet on Drive. And within that is where you'd find a link. You can also find a link to the chapter handbook. The handbook isn't built to be sort of read once and put away. It's built to actually be a continuous resource for leadership, covering all the things as they come up for leaders. Say you're getting ready for an event and you want to know about materials, you can refer to the chapter handbook. Or you want to know about printing T-shirts or things, getting a logo or some of those types of things. That's where you would go to the chapter handbook. In addition, the chapter handbook is updated. It'll be updated every year with our annual report and with any of the updated policies of the organization and things like that. So when we look into the chapter handbook, this is the full table of contents. And I know this is overwhelming to look at, and we're definitely not going to go through the sections of this handbook tonight. I just wanted to call your attention to kind of the contents. So the first section that you see here, the areas that are highlighted in green, really focus on who Elders Climate Action is, talking about our mission, our values, our policies and principles, and then our executive summaries and annual reports, timelines, those kinds of things. This is all up to date with 2017 annual report information, but we have not had a chance to update into 2018. We have not finalized our annual report yet. When we do, we will add that to this handbook, and it will be a live edition for you. And then same thing with the core principles and policies. I know the policy committee is working on some revisions, and that will also live update for you in this handbook once those are available. The next big section of the handbook, the primary reason why the handbook really was built is to give you access to these sort of what we call business materials for chapters. So these are things that you can link to. If you link to ECA materials on the website, you'll see a list of the different sections of the action toolkit. You can find out about join forms for chapters, or how to get contacts from ECA, or using a chapter Facebook page or web page, those kinds of, this is the section that you would go to for this type of information. It also includes things like chapter fundraising, or our fundraising guidance that Jerry was talking about. And then directions for things like getting into Zoom to set up meetings for your chapter. The next section is focused on building engagement in your chapter. So some of the suggestions that might help you reach out and find new membership and build interaction and engagement within your chapter. And things from suggestions like things like book clubs and movie nights to things like, reminding you not to forget to invite people to events that you're going to. So say you're going to a march or a rally or a meeting with a representative, send out a note to people in your chapter and just let them know what time and where you're going to be. And maybe you'll have some people start to join you doing those events. I know for some of us, it's easier to do things with other people than to do them alone. So this is a great area for just trying to build your imagination and your ideas for how to engage. And certainly if any of the chapters have additional things to add to this section, I would love to know. So please share. The next section is a lot of what we've talked about tonight in terms of chapter leadership responsibility, things like your chapter reports, representing ECA, managing finances, and things like sharing your chapter photos. So this section, you'll also find the Hermes principles, but this section is really geared towards your responsibilities as a leader. And then last, I sort of bring it back to green again with, this is a section focused on how do you get support from us? How do you contact us? It's got our contact information for the national leadership, and then also some of our committee descriptions for those of you who want to know what committee do I contact with this suggestion, or maybe you're interested in joining a specific committee. So two areas where you can find a lot of tools and resources for chapters. One area is going to be on the ECA website, and that is in the Get Informed section. In the Get Informed section is where you're going to find the action toolkit, and as well as climate resources. So anything that's information based, anything that's about the organization or about climate change, look in the Get Informed section of the website and you'll find it. Go to the action toolkit and you'll find everything specific to ECA. So action toolkit is really focused on all the materials and resources that we as Elders Climate Action have produced. So you can see the candidates pledge project results. You can see an archive of our newsletters, materials for events that you can download and print off of your home printer, or you could send out to a print house to have printed. Info sheets and infographics that we've created, posters and banners that you can download and again print at home or send out to a print house. Things like presentations, social media graphics. We have some tips on how to talk with other people about climate change. And then you can always find our video and audio recordings, as well as we now have a section for our webinars. So in the video audio recordings, you'll find our national calls and the archive of our national calls, and as well as past webinars and some other video projects that we've done through the year. And then you'll find the 4 webinar series from last year there. On the Council of Chapters folder on Google Drive, that's really where you're gonna find all of the shared information that either we've created for you or that we wanna have collaborative between the two of us. So between your chapter and the national organization. So you'll find the chapter getting started guide, which is the basic guide for people who are wishing to start a chapter. You'll find chapter handbook, the join forms, and the response sheets that go along with those forms for your specific chapter. And then the chapter monthly reports, logos, business cards, so on. So this is the one-stop shop for all things ECA chapters. I'm not going to go into detail about this step-by-step process tonight, but this slide is basically showing you the basic steps to how to submit your monthly chapter report, your action reports, and how to get the action report information from your chapter members. So this first slide is basically showing you, is basically telling you that step one is that you need to email a link to the form to your chapter members. And so the next slide here, you can see in the upper portion, I've highlighted the blind carbon copy line, and I've created a snippet of text that basically you can cut and paste into your email format, and then just change the things that are circled. So change your chapter name and insert a link to your chapter member action report. I can also help you set up this content for your email, that you would just use the same content every month. You would send the same email every month to your chapter members. They would get accustomed to even looking for it because they know it's coming and they're excited to give you their data. And then they would fill out this action report with their data of what they've done as a member of the chapter. In the top, you see that I've circled BCC, and that's to remind us that when we're emailing any of our membership, we should always be using blind carbon copy or a mail management system like MailChimp that protects the privacy of individuals' email addresses. So whenever you're emailing from your chapter on behalf of the chapter, in your chapter email account, just make sure you're blind carbon copying your list of email addresses when you're using a large list of emails. If you're sending to one or two people, it's not that big of a deal, but when you're using big lists, we really need to try to protect the privacy, and we want to protect your privacy. So this email would be sent out monthly. The data would all dump into a Google Sheet. And so the next slide is going to show us where the Google Sheet is stored. And the Google Sheet is actually stored in the Council of Chapters folder, but it's stored for your chapter in your individual chapter folder. Oops, excuse me. Your individual chapter folder here, you see in the bubble. So each chapter has its own folder, and you can find things specific to your chapter within that folder. So in the case of the members action report, it's going to be in your chapter folder, but then the chapter action report that you put that information to send to national is actually going to be here in your in the Council of Chapters folder. So you will go to your response form, gather the responses, move that response information into the monthly action report. It's actually a very simple process that looks complicated by PowerPoint presentation slides. Mostly, I just want you to see that in Council of Chapters, within the Council of Chapters folder, you see your folder, and then you also can find the things that are shared documents between all of the chapters. So things like the chapter monthly action report. Last, I just want to say that Elders Climate Action is on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and on YouTube. We're also on LinkedIn. I forgot to add that link here. And we're exploring some other options for 2019 in social media. And then some of our chapters have Facebook pages of their own also. So Ann Arbor has a Facebook page, Arizona, NorCal, and Massachusetts. And so those 4 Facebook pages, anything that I post for Elders Climate Action that is sort of our original content also posts to those 4 Facebook pages. So if you would like a Facebook page for your chapter, it's a great way to build engagement. Massachusetts, for example, has over 600 followers in their Facebook page. So it's a great way for Massachusetts to reach out to their own, for the Massachusetts chapter to reach out in their own community. It's also a really great way to share really community-specific information. So to talk about the issues directly affecting Massachusetts, Facebook is a really relevant way to do that. So I highly encourage you all to find us on social media, to use social media, and to build social media with your chapters.
All right. Well, our goal here today and throughout is to answer your questions and provide the resources that help you facilitate growth and vitality as ECA chapters. Now, the resources that we've pointed to were all developed out of the experience and need of our chapters. This is not something we went out and invented off somewhere in outer space and then decided to plop down on top of our chapters and members, but rather these are responses that have developed to the specific situations we found ourselves in. So as we form new chapters, as we face new opportunities and challenges, they will trigger our need to build new resources and add to or amend our existing guidance. So we need your input. And where do you need help? Where do you want to know more? What questions do you have for which you don't find an answer as you explore the resources we've highlighted tonight? Raise questions and we'll set up future calls. We've set up a call for January 30th at 7 p.m. And what we'd really like to do, if we have the time and ability, is to structure it around what you feel would be most helpful for you. It may be that there's some things that we touched on and you go and you start looking at the website, or you try and going in Google Docs and you go, oh, you know, I just really need someone to walk me through and demo this. Not PowerPoints, but let's see it in real time. Maybe there's specific issues in forming your chapter that you're not quite sure how they get the guidance that we've provided and the materials don't really speak to where you see yourself. So what we'd like to do is structure upcoming calls around defining, identifying your needs, making sure you have access to and understand the resources we've created, and then developing with you and with your assistance any additional resources or materials that will help you be vital, efficient, functioning chapters. Jerry?
Thank you. All right. So we are going to leave a legacy of change. We as elders can do this. We must do it for our grandchildren and for all future generations. So let's move on and create chapters, get members, take action, stand up, and let our voices be heard. And this is actually the end of the presentation. However, I'd like to unmute people, and if you have questions, please raise your hand and we'll go around and answer some questions. Any questions so far? Hunter. Can we unmute Hunter?
Oh, I unmuted myself. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for the presentation. There's been a lot of very helpful information and clearly a lot for those of us who aren't familiar with it to dig into. Mm-hmm. To get to my question, I'm part of the Massachusetts chapter. I'm not quite sure how formal my relationship is right now, but I live in Massachusetts, and but I live in a sort of remote location off the southeast coast of the state. And I've been talking up Elders Climate Action here in my community. We have a couple of very important climate-related issues right here in our own backyard that we can work on, or we in fact are working on. But as I talk to potential new members, and as I think about what the national organization could do to reach people in other states, I would be curious, it would be very helpful to have more specific information about I am now looking at the core principles and policies about the kinds of what I would call targets or opportunities to influence policies in the area of limiting and halting further extraction of fossil fuels, reducing present emissions, drawing down carbon from the atmosphere, blah, blah. And I can think of a couple more agricultural related issues that carbon sequestration kinds of things that would be very useful in my agricultural community. But I could do the research, but I don't know what those various opportunities and issues are. I mean, particularly at the national level. And I'm wondering, if not tonight, of course, possibly for a future call, we could get more specific information about actual ongoing or developing policies or places where they should be developed, where we could focus our energies or join somebody else's activity. I hope that's clear.
Yeah, sure. And it's really important. I think that it's good. We can do that on a future call, and we'll do that. We have a policy committee that's headed by a scientist, a long-term environmental scientist, and he, in tandem with actually Sheila from California, have worked on done a lot of research on policies. We have a policy section on our website, and we've been actually talking about, with the policy committee, about adding a section where there's some basic information, but then people who want to take a deeper dive, there'll be information there. The other thing is that we collaborate with other organizations. We don't have a huge capacity ourselves. And so we collaborate with other organizations that may be embarking on a project. So it may be that we find out about a project that, I'll give you an example. We are collaborating with Moms Clean Air Force on trying to impact the potential rollback of the mercury regulations from the EPA. We'll partner with an organization. We can, from a national level, we need to be better at informing the chapters, and maybe we need to send out something to chapter leaders, a bulletin to chapter leaders about what's going on nationally every once in a while to let you know that there's these partnerships that we've got, there's information that's a sort of deeper dive, but we can have Steve Simon come and with Sheila together and talk at a future meeting. That would be great. Sheila, would you be willing to do that?
You're mute.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I did anyway.
Yeah, there are a lot of groups out there that are looking at agriculture, like Biodiversity for a Livable Climate. I mean, we have partner organizations and others where this may be part of their focus, that we can use their resources that are on their websites or partner with them on these, because we're not in a position to reinvent the wheel.
Don't want to do that. I just want to know about it.
Sure. And I guess Lenora is asking about no-till on the plains. It's not something I know anything about, I can tell you. But when questions like that come up, where it's sort of more like on a policy science level, that gets referred to the policy committee. And in fact, question came up about a law in that was proposed in California. We sent it to the policy committee to evaluate what the impact, whether that had a positive or negative impact. They did, and they made a recommendation back to the chapter on that particular issue. So Lenora, that's a great question. We can forward. Francis, thank you. Rodale Institute is doing work on no-till and low-till agriculture.
I don't know a lot about it or really anything about it. It just sounds interesting. I read about it in a book.
Great. Thank you. Great questions. Thank you, Hunter. Thank you, Lenora. We'll certainly address that issue for you, Hunter.
Thank you very much.
And can I just, real quick, can I just add that as far as my understanding also, Hunter, and just to inform the rest of you, my understanding from Steve and talking to him about sort of the work that the policy committee is focused on, and maybe Sheila can help with this, but is that they're really looking at a little bit more of an intersectional approach to climate change than we've looked previously. Previously, we've been a little more focused on energy and energy policy, and they're broadening the scope to look at things like transportation, agriculture, industry, all of that. And that's really driven by the process of our partner, U.S. Climate Action Network, the coalition of 170 climate organizations. We're sort of building policy focus together in some aspect. And so we'll modify that policy to suit Elders Climate Action's needs, but it will certainly be a little bit more broad and intersectional.
Well, if I might just say, Project Drawdown, which the book Drawdown was published in 2017, that has really broadened a lot of people's thinking about how to address climate change. And I'm all in favor of broadening the base of solutions that we look at and consider supporting. So, yeah, and actually the U.S. Climate Action Network committee that I'm participating in is basically using the material on Drawdown and that perspective too. So anyway, yeah.
Great, thank you, Sheila. And as Sheila said, we have access to a lot of other organizations through the U.S. Climate Action Network. So, you know, if there's a question that comes up that we have no information on, can't find it on the web, we can, you know, kind of look to there and see if anybody's working on a specific issue. So, any other questions? Let us know whether you found this valuable, please. Whether you can tell us if you didn't. This is not about us. This is about you. So tell us that we're here to serve you. You know, you guys are the boots on the ground, and we're creating materials and strategies and supports for you. So we want to be on target. So, you know, please let us know if this is valuable, and also if you can come to the call on the 30th if you've got suggestions, questions that you want on that agenda. We'll be happy to address them. Grady, you're muted, Grady.
Right.
You're unmuted now, Grady.
Okay. Yeah, actually, it's a question that came to mind because I thought it was where Hunter was headed. You know, as he said, is at a remote location on one of the islands off the coast of Massachusetts. So he and others are not going to be coming to our monthly chapter meetings in the Boston area. And I'm just wondering, and I imagine he might be, would it make sense for a group that's affiliated with the Massachusetts chapter to perhaps take on some of the characteristics of a chapter, you know, to have their own meetings, their own activities in a sort of semi-independent way? And do we have any support for that, or do we have any examples where that has happened? None come to mind as I pose the question, but you may know of some.
I don't, but one of the things that could happen, and it's really just kind of going to depend on how a chapter flows and how it chooses to organize. I know in NorCal, there's a large membership, but they're spread all over the place, so they don't physically get together, and likely would not unless they had some sort of a big gathering. The notion is that a chapter, say like Massachusetts, could have pods that are specific to another geographic location. They're part of your general membership, but also kind of focus on a small group that's in a different location. Leslie?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, sorry, I was thinking something else at the moment, but I mean, we can form pods. That may be a group that's part of the Massachusetts chapter, but that functions, meets separately and does separate things. Maybe there could be a Southeastern Massachusetts chapter. I mean, these are all possibilities depending on the energy and will.
Well, I think Grady and I might take this up a little bit between him and me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you guys can probably talk this through. We're happy to help. But I think an example is Citizens Climate Lobby has had chapters that have been in a geographic area, like maybe a county or a region of a state. And now their mission is to have a chapter in every congressional district. So they've those chapters are the congressional chapters are part of a state chapter and part of a region. And they've broken the country up into regions. We're not quite big enough to be able to do that yet. If we broke ourselves up, we would be ones. So our vision is that we can do that, and we would have an East, Central, and West region. We've got a potential chapter in the Midwest and a small chapter in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So yeah, I suggest you do, try and talk it through, and if you see how we can help.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's no more questions, it's a little after 8. We'll send you the recording. It's been a lot of material, so it's like drawdown. Don't read the whole thing at once because you can't. Oh, I wonder what about business cards, or how can I get a banner, or how can I, how can I set up a meeting, or whatever. Just then you just zero in on the particular information that you're looking for at any point in time, and keep us posted. Let us keep us posted as to what you need, what you want, and we'll try as best we can to make it happen. So I'd like to thank you all very much.
Thank you.